2 Chronicles 3 from the Net Bible. The building of the temple. Solomon began building the Lord's temple in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David. This was the place that David prepared at the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. He began building on the 2nd day of the 2nd month of the 4th year of his reign. Solomon laid the foundation for God's temple. Its length, determined according to the old standard of measure, was 90 feet, and its width 30 feet. The porch in front of the main hall was 30 feet long, corresponding to the width of the temple, and its height was 30 feet. He plated the inside with pure gold. He panelled the main hall with boards made from evergreen trees, and plated it with fine gold, decorated with palm trees and chains. He decorated the temple with precious stones. The gold he used came from Parvaim. He overlaid the temple's rafters, thresholds, walls and doors with gold. He carved decorative cherubim on the walls. He made the most holy place. Its length was 30 feet, corresponding to the width of the temple, and its width 30 feet. He plated it with 600 talents of fine gold. The gold nails weighed 50 shekels. He also plated the upper areas with gold. In the most holy place, he made 2 images of cherubim and plated them with gold. The combined wingspan of the cherubim was 30 feet. One of the first cherub's wings was 7.5 feet long and touched one wall of the temple. Its other wing was also 7.5 feet long and touched one of the second cherub's wings. Likewise, one of the second cherub's wings was 7.5 feet long and touched the other wall of the temple. Its other wing was also 7.5 feet long and touched one of the first cherub's wings. The combined wingspan of these cherubim was 30 feet. They stood upright, facing inward. He made the curtain out of violet, purple, crimson and white fabrics and embroidered on it decorative cherubim. In front of the temple, he made 2 pillars which had a combined length of 52.5 feet, each having a plated capital 7.5 feet high. He made ornamental chains and put them on top of the pillars. He also made 100 pomegranate-shaped ornaments and arranged them within the chains. He set up the pillars in front of the temple, one on the right side and the other on the left. He named the one on the right Yakin and the one on the left Boaz. 2 Chronicles 4 from the Net Bible. He made a bronze altar, 30 feet long, 30 feet wide and 15 feet high. He also made the big bronze basin called the Sea. It measured 15 feet from rim to rim, was circular in shape and stood 7.5 feet high. Its circumference was 45 feet. Images of bulls were under it all the way around, 10 every 18 inches all the way around. The bulls were in 2 rows and had been cast with the sea. The sea stood on top of 12 bulls. 3 faced northward, 3 westward, 3 southward and 3 eastward. The sea was placed on top of them and they all faced outward. It was 4 fingers thick and its rim was like that of a cup, shaped like a lily blossom. It could hold 18,000 gallons. He made 10 washing basins. He put 5 on the south side and 5 on the north side. In them they rinsed the items used for burnt sacrifices. The priests washed in the sea. He made 10 gold lampstands, according to specifications, and put them in the temple, 5 on the right and 5 on the left. He made 10 tables and set them in the temple, 5 on the right and 5 on the left. He also made 100 gold bowls. He made the courtyard of the priests and the large enclosure and its doors. He plated their doors with bronze. He put the sea on the south side in the southeast corner. Huram-Abi made the pots, shovels and bowls. He finished all the work on God's temple he had been assigned by King Solomon. He made the 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped tops of the pillars, the lattice work for the bowl-shaped tops of the 2 pillars, the 400 pomegranate-shaped ornaments for the lattice work of the 2 pillars. Each lattice work had 2 rows of these ornaments at the bowl-shaped top of the pillar. The 10 movable stands with their 10 basins, the big bronze basin called the sea, with its 12 balls underneath, and the pots, shovels and meat forks. All the items King Solomon assigned Huram-Abi to make for the Lord's temple were made from polished bronze. The king had them cast in earth foundries in the region of the Jordan between Succoth and Zarethan. Solomon made so many of these items they did not weigh the bronze. Solomon also made these items for God's temple: the gold altar, the tables on which the bread of the presence was kept, the pure gold lampstands and their lamps which burned as specified at the entrance to the inner sanctuary, the pure gold flower-shaped ornaments, lamps and tongs, the pure gold trimming shears, basins, pans and censers, and the gold door sockets for the inner sanctuary, the most holy place, and for the doors of the main hall of the temple. Ezekiel 40 from the Net Bible. Vision of the new temple. In the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was struck down, on this very day, the hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me there. By means of divine visions, he brought me to the land of Israel and placed me on a very high mountain, and on it was a structure like a city to the south. When he brought me there, I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze, with a linen cord and a measuring stick in his hand. He was standing in the gateway. The man said to me, "Son of man, watch closely, listen carefully, and pay attention to everything I show you, for you have been brought here so that I can show it to you. Tell the house of Israel everything you see." I saw a wall all around the outside of the temple. In the man's hand was a measuring stick 10.5 feet long. He measured the thickness of the wall as 10.5 feet, and its height as 10.5 feet. Then he went to the gate facing east. He climbed its steps and measured the threshold of the gate as 10.5 feet deep. The alcoves were 10.5 feet long and 10.5 feet wide. Between the alcoves were 8 3/4 feet. The threshold of the gate by the porch of the gate facing inward was 10.5 feet. Then he measured the porch of the gate facing inward as 10.5 feet. He measured the porch of the gate as 14 feet and its jambs as 3.5 feet. The porch of the gate faced inward. There were 3 alcoves on each side of the east gate. The 3 had the same measurement, and the jambs on either side had the same measurement. He measured the width of the entrance of the gateway as 17.5 feet, and the length of the gateway as 22 3/4 feet. There was a barrier in front of the alcoves, 1 3/4 feet on either side. The alcoves were 10.5 feet on either side. He measured the gateway from the roof of one alcove to the roof of the other, a width of 43 3/4 feet from one entrance to the opposite one. He measured the porch at 105 feet high. The gateway went all around to the jorm of the courtyard. From the front of the entrance gate to the porch of the inner gate was 87.5 feet. There were closed windows toward the alcoves and toward their jorms within the gate all around, and likewise for the porches. There were windows all around the inside, and on each jorm were decorative palm trees. Then he brought me to the outer court. I saw chambers there, and a pavement made for the court all around. 30 chambers faced the pavement. The pavement was beside the gates, corresponding to the length of the gates. This was the lower pavement. Then he measured the width from before the lower gate to the front of the exterior of the inner court as 175 feet on the east and on the north. He measured the length and width of the gate of the outer court which faces north, its alcoves, 3 on each side, and its jorms and porches had the same measurement as the first gate, 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. Its windows, its porches, and its decorative palm trees had the same measurement as the gate which faced east. 7 steps led up to it, and its porch was in front of them. Opposite the gate on the north and the east was a gate of the inner court. He measured the distance from gate to gate at 175 feet. Then he led me toward the south. I saw a gate on the south. He measured its jorms and its porches. They had the same dimensions as the others. There were windows all around it and its porches, like the windows of the others, 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. There were 7 steps going up to it. Its porches were in front of them. It had decorative palm trees on its jorms, one on either side. The inner court had a gate toward the south. He measured it from gate to gate toward the south as 175 feet. Then he brought me to the inner court by the south gate. He measured the south gate. It had the same dimensions as the others. Its alcoves, its jorms and its porches had the same dimensions as the others, and there were windows all around it and its porches. Its length was 87.5 feet and its width 43 3/4 feet. There were porches all around, 43 3/4 feet long and 8 3/4 feet wide. Its porches faced the outer court, and decorative palm trees were on its jorms, and its stairway had 8 steps. Then he brought me to the inner court on the east side. He measured the gate. It had the same dimensions as the others. Its alcoves, its jorms, and its porches had the same dimensions as the others, and there were windows all around it and its porches. Its length was 87.5 feet, and its width 43 3/4 feet. Its porches faced the outer court. It had decorative palm trees on its jorms, and its stairway had 8 steps. Then he brought me to the north gate, and he measured it. It had the same dimensions as the others. Its alcoves, its jorms, and its porches. It had windows all around it. Its length was 87.5 feet, and its width 43 3/4 feet. Its jorms faced the outer court, and it had decorative palm trees on its jorms on either side, and its stairway had 8 steps. There was a chamber with its door by the porch of the gate. There they washed the burnt offering. In the porch of the gate were 2 tables on either side on which to slaughter the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. On the outside of the porch, as one goes up at the entrance of the north gate, were 2 tables, and on the other side of the porch of the gate were 2 tables. 4 tables were on each side of the gate, 8 tables on which the sacrifices were to be slaughtered. The 4 tables for the burnt offering were of carved stone, 32 inches long, 32 inches wide, and 21 inches high. They would put the instruments which they used to slaughter the burnt offering and the sacrifice on them. There were hooks 3 inches long, fastened in the house all around, and on the tables was the flesh of the offering. On the outside of the inner gate were chambers for the singers of the inner court, one at the side of the north gate facing south, and the other at the side of the south gate facing north. He said to me, "This chamber, which faces south, is for the priests who keep charge of the temple, and the chamber which faces north is for the priests who keep charge of the altar. These are the descendants of Zadok, from the descendants of Levi, who may approach the Lord to minister to him." He measured the court as a square 175 feet long and 175 feet wide. The altar was in front of the temple. Then he brought me to the porch of the temple and measured the jambs of the porch as 8 3/4 feet on either side, and the width of the gate was 24.5 feet, and the sides were 5 1/4 feet on each side. The length of the porch was 35 feet, and the width 19 1/4 feet. Steps led up to it, and there were pillars beside the jambs on either side. John 6 from the Net Bible. The feeding of the 5,000. After this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd was following him because they were observing the miraculous signs he was performing on the sick. So Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Jewish feast of the Passover was near. Then Jesus, when he looked up and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, said to Philip, "Where can we buy bread so that these people may eat?" Now Jesus said this to test him, for he knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, 200 silver coins worth of bread would not be enough for them, for each one to get a little. One of Jesus' disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "Here is a boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many people?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." Now there was a lot of grass in that place. So the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed the bread to those who were seated. He then did the same with the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were all satisfied, Jesus said to his disciples, "Gather up the broken pieces that are left over, so that nothing is wasted." So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with broken pieces from the 5 barley loaves left over by the people who had eaten. Now when the people saw the miraculous sign that Jesus performed, they began to say to one another, "This is certainly the prophet who is to come into the world." Then Jesus, because he knew they were going to come and seize him by force to make him king, withdrew again up the mountainside alone. Walking on water. Now when evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, got into a boat, and started to cross the lake to Capernaum. It had already become dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. By now a strong wind was blowing, and the sea was getting rough. Then, when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they caught sight of Jesus walking on the lake, approaching the boat, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat came to the land where they had been heading. The next day, the crowd that remained on the other side of the lake realized that only one small boat had been there, and that Jesus had not boarded it with his disciples, but that his disciples had gone away alone. Other boats from Tiberias came to shore near the place where they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. So when the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and came to Capernaum looking for Jesus. Jesus' discourse about the bread of life. When they found him on the other side of the lake, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Jesus replied, "I tell you the solemn truth. You are looking for me not because you saw miraculous signs, but because you ate all the loaves of bread you wanted. Do not work for the food that disappears, but for the food that remains to eternal life, the food which the Son of Man will give to you. For God the Father has put his seal of approval on him." So then they said to him, "What must we do to accomplish the deeds God requires?" Jesus replied, "This is the deed God requires, to believe in the one whom he sent." So they said to him, "Then what miraculous sign will you perform, so that we may see it and believe you? What will you do?" "Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, just as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." Then Jesus told them, "I tell you the solemn truth. It is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but my Father is giving you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the one who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." So they said to him, "Sir, give us this bread all the time." Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. The one who comes to me will never go hungry, and the one who believes in me will never be thirsty. But I told you that you have seen me and still do not believe. Everyone whom the Father gives me will come to me, and the one who comes to me I will never send away. For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of the one who sent me. Now this is the will of the one who sent me, that I should not lose one person of every one he has given me, but raise them all up at the last day. For this is the will of my Father, for everyone who looks on the Son and believes in him to have eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day." Then the Jews who were hostile to Jesus began complaining about him because he said, "I am the bread that came down from heaven." And they said, "Isn't this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he now say, 'I have come down from heaven'?" Jesus replied, "Do not complain about me to one another. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they will all be taught by God. Everyone who hears and learns from the Father comes to me, Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. I tell you the solemn truth. The one who believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness and they died. This is the bread that has come down from heaven so that a person may eat from it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats from this bread, he will live forever. The bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. Then the Jews who were hostile to Jesus began to argue with one another. How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Jesus said to them, I tell you the solemn truth. Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in yourselves. The one who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. The one who eats my flesh and drinks my blood resides in me, and I in him. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so the one who consumes me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. It is not like the bread your ancestors ate but then later died. The one who eats this bread will live forever. Many followers depart. Jesus said these things while he was teaching in the synagogue in Capernaum. Then many of his disciples, when they heard these things, said, This is a difficult saying. Who can understand it? When Jesus was aware that his disciples were complaining about this, he said to them, Does this cause you to be offended? Then what if you see the Son of Man ascending where he was before? The Spirit is the one who gives life. Human nature is of no help. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and are life. But there are some of you who do not believe. For Jesus had already known from the beginning who those were who did not believe, and who it was who would betray him. So Jesus added, Because of this, I told you that no one can come to me unless the Father has allowed him to come. Peter's confession. After this, many of his disciples quit following him and did not accompany him any longer. So Jesus said to the 12, You don't want to go away too, do you? Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom would we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and to know that you are the Holy One of God. Jesus replied, Didn't I choose you, the 12? And yet one of you is the devil. Now he said this about Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. For Judas, one of the 12, was going to betray him.